Okay, we have one person on the public agenda, and that person is Clinton Coen, and the topic is to discuss the December 6th City Council meeting and respect for constituents.
All right. Thank you, Council, Mayor. I was going to discuss the December 6th City Council meeting. The South Fork TIF District was being discussed when Councilman Meitzner decided that Bob Weeks needed to identify his blog. I have not seen a city policy that says a blogger must identify their blog when addressing the council. Asking Mr. Weeks to identify his blog is like asking someone to identify their Facebook page or their Twitter handle when in front of the council, because they both contain blogging elements. Mr. Meitzner has gone off on this tangent on multiple occasions, but it doesn't seem relevant to the discussion at hand, and when what he discusses about the blog is generally not what is being discussed leading up to Mr. Meitzner's line of questioning. Even the sign on the lectern says, when addressing the city council, please state your name and address. It does not mention blogs, blogging sites, or social media. If Mr. Meitzner disagrees with the lack of a clear policy, he is serving in a position where he can positively influence policies regarding lobbyists addressing the city council, policies like we currently have at the state and federal levels. If Mr. Meitzner wants full disclosure, we can easily ask him to identify which individuals donated to his campaigns prior to each vote, which would be more relevant than a blog because it could represent a potential conflict of interest. It would be argued that since the campaign finance reports are online and available to the public, that further disclosure is not necessary. The same would then apply to Mr. Weeks' blog. Mayor Brewer doesn't think discussing this discussion of the blog is relevant to the discussion taking place during the TIF discussion, but a council member brought up the blog, so if the blog was relevant, discussing the discussion of the blog was just as relevant. If the mayor wants to keep discussion relevant to the agenda item, he should start enforcing the policy by keeping council members discussing what is relevant and not going off on a tangent. Mr. Brewer doesn't think campaign contributions are relevant to the discussion of a TIF district, but voting to directly enrich a campaign contributor has the appearance of corruption, which in and of itself is not illegal because there are no laws that prohibit it. Many municipalities and other levels of government have laws that prohibit politicians from voting to directly enrich those that have donated to their campaigns, and one could speculate that the city of Wichita would benefit greatly from such laws. Mr. Brewer says campaigns are over, but that seems like he doesn't feel the constituents deserve answers to their questions regarding potential conflicts of interest. Things that happen don't just become irrelevant because Election Day has passed. Councilman Clendenin took offense to Mr. Weeks' comments, but he had no reason to be offended. He simply stated at least one member of the council has accepted campaign contributions from Mr. Maxwell and his wife. Mr. Weeks was simply stating facts, and the fact is that at least one council member has received donations from this developer. Weeks did not suggest that any one council member had done anything illegal, contrary to Mr. Brewer's assertions in a media interview following the council meeting. Since no laws exist regarding enrichment of campaign donors, it is not an accusation of illegal activity. I do find it interesting that Mr. Brewer would use the term integrity in the interview, because integrity is defined as firm adherence to a code of especially moral values. A synonym would be incorruptibility, which would play into what Mr. Weeks was getting at, with his statement that there is no reason that this council can't act as though such laws are in place. In fact, a person that exhibits integrity would do so because that would be symbolic of having moral character and doing things that are not required but are done to uphold a person's moral character. Legality isn't equitable to morality. Some would say voting to enrich a campaign contributor is not moral, and I would have to agree. Now, for me to correct some misinformation. Mr. Clendenin was only partially correct when he said he voted against the IRBs for Pixius, when asked to cite specific examples when he voted against the developer. And this also happens to provide an example where it looks bad for a council member to vote directly to enrich a campaign contributor. What Mr. Clendenin was referencing was the city council meeting that took place on May 10th, 2011. At the council meeting, Mr. Clendenin did vote against a letter of intent for industrial revenue bonds. He did not vote against issuing IRBs, as he made it sound, which a letter of intent is not necessarily voting for or against a developer. Further, he didn't state why he voted against the letter of intent, but one has to speculate that it comes from the city staff's recommendation, which was to deny the letter of intent because the IRBs did not meet the current council's policy. Then Mr. Clendenin voted in favor of the facade improvement project for the same developer for the same project. The only council member that did vote against that facade improvement was Councilman O'Donnell. To recap, Mr. Meitzner is in a position to positively influence the policies regarding lobbyists. and he would have my support as well as the support of many individuals that oppose him on other issues if he stepped forward to change policies regarding lobbyists to make the process more transparent. If Mr. Brewer wants the topics of discussion to remain relevant, he should better control the discussion that is started by his colleagues on the bench. The discussion was brought up by a council member. What I said was relevant to what had already been discussed. And if council members are intent on correcting misinformation, they should first make sure all of their information is correct. If you want full disclosure, it is a two-way street. Again, we are not accusing anyone of illegal activity. No laws exist regarding the enrichment of campaign donors. We are simply asking council to enact these policies because voting to enrich campaign donors is not good public policy and it appears corrupt. Thank you.
Any questions? Councilman Meitzner?
Yeah, Mr. Coen, thanks for your comments, and want to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas.
You too.
All right.
Any other comment? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?